I know there are people out there that absolutely love paper piecing, and there are those that are a little resistant to the whole process. This is what I can tell you about doing this tricky shape, the isosceles triangle and a square. If you choose to foundation paper piece the unit, you will get perfect results. The other two techniques, you get really great results, but there can be a little variance in it just by the nature of the beast and the long bias seams and all that good stuff. So, not in the pattern that you have, but on the website, I have drawn you patterns, all right? It's important when you go to print it that you look at the settings on your printer and it's full size or to scale. And the way you know it's right or wrong is that you take this 1 little inch and you measure it and make sure it's 1 little inch. Then you're good to go. As far as what paper to use, really, you can use whatever you want, but if you're a novice, I would really consider getting vellum because it's kind of see-through. It's a little bit more expensive, but think of it as training wheels. And then once you get good at it, use whatever you want. I do like Carol Doak's paper a lot. Lots of people think that there's waste when it comes to foundation paper piecing, waste of fabric that is. Well, there's a little bit, but with a little bit of pre-cutting, you can avoid massive waste. So let's start with the tree. What I suggest you do is you cut a strip of green that is like 5 1/8, okay? And then I'm going to show you how to pre-cut it so that you don't have a bunch of leftover side things, okay? Let's take a look. So here I have my 5 1/8 inch wide fabric. You could even do 5 1/4. It doesn't really matter. But what you're going to do is you're going to figure out what half of 5 1/8 is. And I'm realizing now I should have done 5 1/4. But let's say it's 2 1/2 plus just a little itty bitty bit, like a 1/16. I'm going to mark this on this side. And then I'm going to come over, turn my ruler around so my numbers are going in the right way. 5 1/8, and keep marking down like this. Then up here, I'm going to start with 5 1/8 and make a little mark and come over 5 1/8 and a little mark. And I would do the whole width of the fabric. Then I take my rotary cutter and I cut from the corner down to here. There's your waist. And then I go here. And then I go here. And so forth. And then I've got my pre-cuts that are going to fit on here quite nicely. Let's talk about cutting the background now, pre-cutting. I want you to take a look at this layout here. You will note that on the background, there's a left-hand side and a right-hand side. And what that means is that they are mirror images. So when you pre-cut your square at 5 1/2 by 3 1/2, make sure that you have like sides together. If you don't, well, let me show you. Cut your square again at 5 1/2 by 3 1/2, then cut it corner to corner. If you didn't do like sides together, you're only going to end up with a bunch of one sides, right? But if I do like sides together, yay! I've got a left and a right. Let's talk a little bit about your pattern. 2 come to each page, so of course I've cut it apart. You have the sewing lines, which are the solid lines, and then you have the dotted lines, which will be the cutting lines when you're done constructing the block. Again, this is on vellum, so you can see through it. Let's go to the machine. In the olden days, I didn't foundation paper piece until C&T Publishing wanted me to write a book on it, and I'm like, I don't do that. But they refused to sign another contract unless I signed a contract for foundation paper piecing. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn this. And it was real interesting because through the process of writing the book, I realized that there are blocks that absolutely call to this, like the New York Beauty, Kaleidoscope, and in fact, this crazy little tree block. And I have to tell you, even though I whined writing the first book, when it was time for the second edition, which is in print now, I was like, I love you, foundation paper piecing. I can't believe I was so resistant to you for so long. So let's look again at the pattern, all right? This is the side that is the right side up. This is the side that you will be sewing on. You want to make sure that your stitch length is down to 2, all right? Normally it's 2.5. And then what you do is you take the pattern and you turn it upside down and you position the fabric like this, looking at me, and then you turn it over and you make sure here, whoops, I want to hold it up so you can see. You make sure that you have ample seam allowance on all sides, the 2 sides and the bottom, and of course the top. Then what I do is I just drop a little pin in so it doesn't shift. Now I'm going to do piece number 2. So I turn it over and I find this particular piece. I line it up. Oops, raw edge to raw edge. I might even drop a couple little pins in here, down here where I will not be sewing, but it keeps it from perhaps getting tucked under and you sew it by mistake or whatever. And then I go on this side and I'm going, where are you? There you go. I'm going to sew all the way from the edge down here all the way to the edge. I am sewing piece 2 onto piece 1. No need to backstitch. Cut the thread and then take out the pins and off we go to the iron. So I simply take my piece, go like this, and press it. Now I turn it over and go, yay, I can see fabric outside the edge. Happy days. Let's go sew on number 3. So here is the next piece, number 3, that I'm going to do. And I'm going to line this up like this, probably making sure that my tips are about the same up here so that I know it's going to go all the way to the edge. I'm going to drop a little pin in down here again, a little pin down here so the fabric doesn't flop into it. Oh, it'll happen, trust me. And then I'm going to sew all the way from the dotted edge onto the solid line. Cut, take out pins, and again off to the ironing board. All right, so very good. I can see that the fabric has made it all the way to the outside edge where the dotted line is. And now I'm going to trim. Using my rotary cutter and ruler, I'm going to trim on the dotted line all the way around. Okay, now this is super important what I'm going to tell you. When you're foundation paper piecing, you will sew these blocks to each other with the paper still on. Never take off the paper ever until your border is sewn on, because these edges are a little bit wonky when it comes to the straight of grain. As far as taking the paper out when it's time, you simply take your seam ripper and just the point of it and just go whoop, or your stiletto and go like that and pull it out. You will have yourself a big fat mess. So do not do this right after you've vacuumed the floor. You can take that to the bank.